Let's talk about the Mexicans. This is a population density map. The deep red, those are the urban cores. The yellow are small towns and suburbs. And if you look north of the border, that pattern, dense urban cores, suburbs, small towns, as a geographer, excuse me, that tells me that it rains. Rain makes farms, farms make small towns make suburbs, suburbs make inner cities. South of the border, you don't have that because it's desert. Pros and cons. Pros, it's oligarchic. There's no interaction among the urban centers in Mexico. Physical interconnections are very, very thin, so only a few families run everything and have since independence over a century and a half ago. Which means if you're an American and you're looking for a partner, all you have to do is go south, figure out who's in charge, knock on their door, introduce yourself. 2 weeks later, you'll be leaving with a blistering hangover, a godchild, because you're part of the family now, and a fistful of signed contracts that you know you can rely upon because you now have a personal connection. Biggest downside of that, though, is once you've gobbled up the labor in that urban area, you're done. Mexicans are not mobile in the way that Americans are. They don't move within their country very much to take jobs because the infrastructure doesn't support it. And the cities stop, and then you just have desert. There's no intermingling at the edges. And the Texans have been working on this for 40 years. And they have already gobbled up probably 80% of the labor that was available. Which means if we're going to rely on the Mexicans to do what we need to do, and oh my God, we need to rely on the Mexicans to do what we need to do, the northern section of the country is not the solution. It's got to be the center. The problem is that the infrastructure isn't there to support it. There are only three, the three black lines, those are the only three intermodal freight facilities within the entire country. They don't interconnect. They just go south on a specific corridor, and they don't really branch off. And if the northern Mexicans have already been metabolized, we have to make it all the way down to Mexico City. That's 1,000 miles away, which means we need to invest at least $1 trillion in Mexican infrastructure in order to reach at scale the 50, 60 million people who live in the center of the country. And we have to do so in a way that doesn't make the Mexicans think that we're trying to take over, which is kind of what we're trying to do. This is going to be touchy, but if we don't pull it off, we will not have the labor to do what we need to do. Because if we still want stuff in a post-China world, we need help to build it. We need a differentiated labor market. And the Mexicans are the only ones within arm's reach that can help with that. There are other players that are further abroad, but we can't integrate with them the same way we can integrate with a neighbor. The Southeast Asian countries look pretty good to me. Thailand is the fastest aging one, but it still has at least another 25 years. The Indonesians and the Vietnamese are great. In fact, the Vietnamese are kind of scary. They've expanded their higher educational system with technical skills in mind. 40% of college grads in Vietnam are STEM graduates. They are attempting, and it looks like they're going to pull it off, to leapfrog over China from a technological point of view, and they will probably achieve that within the next 3 or 4 years. There's also a geography situation that is very helpful. On the left, you're looking at a vegetation map, basically, and the green is tropics. And when you think about building infrastructure in tropics, in mountains, on peninsulas, on islands, it's an expensive, ugly business because you really can't get economies of scale. But there's pros and cons to that too. The con is that these countries have never gone to war with one another like they have in, say, Europe or Northeast Asia. There's not a lot of bad blood. And that means that almost everyone started out in tropical agriculture. And if there's one thing that everyone in tropical agriculture can agree on, is it's that no one wants to be in tropical agriculture. In temperate zone agriculture, there's a value chain. You don't have to do it all by hand. You can get a tractor, you can get a combine, you can get a spreader. In the tropics, no. Tropical fruits, harvested by hand, tended to by hand, transported by hand. You can't have a combine harvesting mangoes. It's all unskilled labor. And so whenever people in tropical ag have a chance, they move out and they go to the cities, and that means population density. Their cities are wildly overpopulated for the skill set of the labor. And that means this is the most competitive part of the world for value-added manufacturing. This is where we're going to see a big footprint expand. Already has. You're talking about 1 billion people. There are already more people in coastal Southeast Asia than there are in coastal China. They're probably the biggest winners in the world after Mexico. But it will look different. Population density again. You'll notice that there aren't threads. When you look at a more normal population structure in an industrialized or industrializing country, you get your urban hub, and then you've got threads of highways that are densely settled going out to the next population center. And that allows for what we consider to be multi-step supply chains, because there's multiple population centers linked together tightly. You can move things back and forth through the system. That doesn't happen in Mexico. It's desert, it's mountainous, it's jungle, combination thereof. And so each urban core will be good, very good at one or two things. And that's it, because they don't have access to a complementary system. So what we do in the United States is we might make the frame, we send it across, they put in the spark plugs. They send it back, we put in the computer system. We send it back, they put in the seats. And it's going to different cities each time. And it's that back and forth that makes it work. But they can't do that at scale within their own system. They have to have that partner. The Vietnamese do not. It's a much more traditional system from our point of view. And so the Vietnamese can do top to bottom manufacturing. The only thing they have to worry about are the components that they can't make themselves, which are substantial. But you can have Vietnam as almost a one-stop shop for most of what we need. We just can kind of add the dusting of the tech that's necessary to make it work. It's cheaper to do. Unfortunately, it's 7,000 miles further away, so we can't do the back and forth. Two different models. All right, let's talk products. If you're at the top of this, you don't know who your third-tier suppliers are, much less your 13th. If you're at the bottom, you can probably fit your entire supply chain on the back of a cocktail napkin after throwing back a few bourbons. If you're on the left, or excuse me, on the right, you're already within the NAFTA system. If you're on the right, you're dependent on the Chinese. Couple examples. Energy. American energy is made with American capital. It's on American pipelines, American workers going to American refineries, ending up with an American consumer. And that is not simple at all. 1,400 supply chain steps for the iPhone, 91% of which involve mainland China in some fashion. The new iPhone just came out a couple weeks ago. You might want to buy two. We're probably getting close to the point where this is the last one. Here's everybody else. Going to pull out a few of these. Automotive. Courtesy of NAFTA 2, over 90% of the supply chains for autos sold in North America are manufactured in North America. Don't mean to suggest we're not going to have some hiccups, but the core of it has already worked, and the rest is just network effects. That's not bad. In terms of foreign investors, the Europeans are of the belief that they can bring in all the parts and just assemble it here. That's not going to work very well. The Asians have figured out that they need to actually do the manufacturing here. So they're probably north of 70% manufactured within North America, where most European companies are less than 10. Heavy vehicles are going to be a problem, though. When you have globalization, it's very common for countries to put their thumbs on the scale to encourage parts of the industrial plant to be in their countries, especially if it's something they can technologically do without a lot of help. As big as they are, a forklift is actually simpler than a passenger car in terms of the equipment and the construction. And since not everybody needs a forklift, it's not like you're going to have these facilities everywhere. So the Chinese really have dominated that space. So forklifts, dump trucks, construction equipment, agriculture equipment, we're going to have a real problem when the Chinese go away. But it is a relatively easy fix, because anyone who can do automotive at scale can also do heavy equipment at scale. It's just a question of the numbers being right. And nothing like half of the stuff vanishing from the world.
হ্যালো বন্ধুরা, কেমন আছেন সবাই? আশা করছি অনেক ভালো আছেন। বন্ধুরা, এই চার্জারটা দেখতেছেন না, এটা হলো স্যামসাংয়ের চার্জার। এই চার্জারটা আমার 5 বছর ধরে, 5 বছর না, মিছা কথা বলে লাভ নেই, এটা আমার 3 বছর ধরে চার্জার, এই চার্জার ব্যবহার করি। চার্জারে কোনো প্রবলেমই দেয় নাই মানে মজার চার্জার স্যামসাংয়ের চার্জার কোনো হলো 1 নম্বর চার্জার আর স্যামসাংয়ের মোবাইলের চার্জার হলো কম ওয়াট মানে 15 ওয়াটের চার্জার এটা জানেনি স্যামসাংয়ের 15 ওয়াটের চার্জার আবার চার্জ কিন্তু লাস্টিং করে বেশি মানে বেশি ওয়াট দিলে কি হয় মানে বেশি ওয়াট চার্জ দিলে স্যামসাংয়ে তো দিবার পায় স্যামসাংয়ে তো বস্তু বানাবার পায় চার্জারটা বানাবার মানে বেশি ওয়াট একটা কথা হইলো দেয় না মানে মোবাইল যদি ফট করে নষ্ট না হয় এত এই যে আমরা স্যামসাংয়ের মোবাইল একটা দেখেনি যে মোবাইল কত বছর চলাইতেছি অন্ধ্রেস মোবাইল এটা কিছুই নেই বুঝছেন না ওর জন্য স্যামসাংয়ের মোবাইল কিনবেন বা স্যামসাংয়ের বস্তু কিনবেন স্যামসাংয়ের বস্তু কিনে 1 নম্বর মানে কোনো প্রবলেম দেয় না চার্জারই কোয়েন মোবাইলই কোয়েন এটা আমার স্যামসাং আমার মোবাইল সব স্যামসাং